focus on the small business aspect. And our first team that's going to be presented is Team A. So I will let you guys go ahead and kick us off.
Well, great. Good morning. We'll wait for our presentation. There it is. Okay. So good morning. We are Team A, and our assignment was to focus on small business in North Lakeland, Kathleen, and Polk City to see the impact of the digital divide in these communities. My name's Tony Camarillo, and I'm the director of the RP Funding Center. And here's the rest of our team.
I'm Ashley Link, and I'm the director of marketing at Southern Homes.
Justin Boulding with Rada Construction.
Andrea.
I'm sorry, this is Andrea McDonald with the Polk County Sheriff's Office.
Awesome. We're going to start by thanking a few key people. Chrisanne Long, who is with us today, she provided us with this data she compiled in a countywide survey that focused on businesses and how they were impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. We'd also like to thank Sarah Breed with the Lakeland Chamber, Robin Jenkins with the Polk County Sheriff's Office, and of course, Talitha and Kirsten from Polk Vision. Thank you. Now we have some relevant statistics. We researched some demographics of our key areas, and I'm just going to highlight a few of them that are key points of interest. First, in Lakeland, the population estimate is about 114,000. The median age is 41.1 years, and the households with broadband internet service, there are 67.3% of households. Then in Kathleen, our population estimate is about 6,500. Median age is 33.5 years, and there are 76.8% of households with broadband internet service. And finally, in Polk City, our population estimate is about 2,700. Median age is 48.2 years, and 77.3% of households have broadband internet service.
So the next few slides include information that was provided by Chrisanne Long's Small Business COVID-19 survey. Her survey included participants from all over Central Florida, so we asked her to narrow her results to specific zip codes in order to identify businesses in our target location. From the 500 plus survey respondents, 74 of them were identified to be from North Lakeland, Polk City, and Kathleen. And our goal with this data was to see how the local businesses were faring before and immediately after the pandemic. And from those 74 businesses, 50% of them had been in business between 1 and 5 years, and another 15% had been in business for less than a year. So many of them were newer businesses. Next, all right. Prior to the COVID-19, a majority of the participants were either growing like crazy or consider themselves to be strong and stable, while another 11% were already facing challenges or in deep decline. Next. So in terms of the current impact of their revenue, only 6 of the respondents stated that their revenue was the same or better, and sadly 47% of the businesses stated that they were earning little to no revenue, and the other respondents were seeing significant revenue reduction.
Hello. Sorry, I froze up a little bit. I think that was my internet. I'm going to touch on a few other key points that we looked at.
This makes the digital divide point, right? We all need better.
Definitely.
Businesses prior to COVID-19. And we saw that 63 of our 74 respondents in our focus area had less than 10 employees. 10 businesses had 10 to 20 employees, and only 1 employer had more than 20 employees. So we're really talking about small businesses here. Going to the post-COVID and how it affected them in layoffs. Unfortunately, a third of the employers did lay off staff during this time. So that was an unfortunate thing. Next slide. And now let's talk about some specific businesses we contacted to see how technology is helping them or hindering them in their operations, and really how their business is operating with this digital divide. I personally spoke with Paul Granville at the Lakeland Ice Arena. What I can say about Paul is he's a very aggressive guy and a real go-getter. They've been active in social media even before they opened, so they certainly are using this and embracing this communication throughout the crisis. Paul kept as many people working as he could and created projects in the facility when he could to bring some people back to give them some work. I recall a few weeks ago when the city manager asked the city attorney to call Paul to tell him that his business was approved to open based on new state guidelines, and I'm sure that was welcome news for Paul. We're really excited that he's back in business. So that's the Lakeland Ice Arena. Next.
Okay, we spoke with Mike Curry from Dixie Southern, which is a steel manufacturing plant in the area we were assigned to. They have seen a small reduction recently, but they think that's just because projects are delayed, not necessarily canceled. They don't really have anyone working from home, or couldn't, because their business is making steel, other than the few guys in the office that are designing it. And the designers, fortunately, were able to use the technology they've been using for some time, that they could kind of work from wherever. But so far, they're kind of continuing as business as usual, and fortunately haven't had to lay anyone off. Okay, we spoke with Scott Brickhouse from Chick-fil-A on the north and south side. At the beginning, when this all first happened, they did see a small reduction, just as everyone was kind of really scared to leave their house and see what was going on. But as things have progressed, their business has actually picked up. They've been fortunate to not lay anyone off. And as their app has been kind of rolling out and being more and more developed, it's even increased their revenues now, as you can do curbside pickup, and now they're working on delivery.
Sorry, I was muted. At Southern Homes, we have been serving Polk County for almost 30 years, and we have 3 communities in North Lakeland. And we actually saw increased business during this time, and really, I think that there's a large majority of that due to our technology capabilities. We already had a lot of things in place, like we had an online sales counselor. You could complete the entire sales process online prior to COVID-19. And we implemented a few new things. Like, the biggest thing was we hired an external company to manage our online chat system, and we saw those leads as a result increase by 2,600%. So there were a lot more people shopping online as well, and then we made sure that we got the word out that you could have all of these capabilities online as well. And that is it. Does anyone have any questions?
So in terms of the digital divide, did you focus on availability of broadband internet with these businesses?
I think for each of them, the specific ones we targeted, we asked them specifically, how that was affecting them. So we did get specifics from those targeted companies. But I think Chris Ann's report that she did, her survey that she did, actually showed us a lot as well. So I think combined between those two were really helpful to let us take a look at that.
Would you guys have any predictions on those that don't have the access or are struggling with the internet connectivity to be able to maintain or sustain their businesses during the economic crisis? I mean, do you have any kind of thoughts? Do you have any anecdotal conversations?
Well, I would say that the people that we spoke to specifically didn't have that challenge. I would think that there is some of that. You can see the Polk City was a little bit low on accessibility, but I don't know if anybody else has any answers for that, but we found that the folks that we talked to were actually had really good access, and they were trying to and they were taking advantage of that.
And where I would think that we would have an issue from, and I can speak definitely from a Southern Homes perspective, is if we have access to all of this, it's great, but we need our customers too. If our customers didn't have access, then they couldn't shop with us, and we would have had a bigger problem.
During your research, was there anything that was shocking that you discovered? Or anything that kind of stood out that you weren't expecting?
To me, I thought that Chick-fil-A, for instance, I mean, this wasn't necessarily technology, but they were talking about how they actually saw increased sales. Am I correct in this?
Right.
Increased sales because they opened up a third drive-through instead of allowing people to park and walk in. So I think that what was interesting to me, that doesn't necessarily have to do with technology, I realize, but even from a Southern Homes perspective, being able to enhance some of these technologies, it was the people who were maneuverable and who were flexible and who acted quickly who were more successful, is what I found.
What's missing? What data is missing that you guys think would be helpful in order to better understand the customer's needs what as it relates to the broadband, or businesses' needs as it relates to broadband? It doesn't feel like there's much data out there about it, so it might have been hard to get, maybe?
I could just say one thing specifically, and I actually deal with it myself, and I think Paul was dealing it, is just getting clear guidelines on what can happen, when it can happen. For example, the reason I mentioned that I was involved in a conversation with the city manager and the city attorney is because Paul was very diligent in calling the city to find out what can I do and when can I do it. So I would just say some clarification from the top on down. You know, the state is putting out these you know, notices and guidelines and when things could happen, and it just seems to me it's just unclear. And I think that if we could, I mean, I'm not sure if that's exactly what you're asking, but I think it really is a big deal, because if we get clear guidelines on what we can do and when we can do it, I think everybody would be moving more swiftly. And Paul certainly is an aggressive guy, so he was just come up with any opportunity, because he has food service, so he was thinking, hey, how can I mobilize food service as part of my core business? So I just think
that's great points.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry, I'm going to cut you off because we're
Yep.
going to wrap up our time together. Thank you, Team A. You guys have done an outstanding job. Thank you. Thank you for all your hard work.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
We enjoyed it.
So we really appreciate it. Feel free to stay on, but we're going to move on into Team B's presentations right now. And so we'd like to just welcome on board Team D. I'm hoping, John Hill, is that you on the phone? I know that you were having a hard time logging in. Is that you on the phone? Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Okay, outstanding.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you
Yes,
hear
sir.
me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you just well. Just fine.
All right. Thank you.
I'm glad
Not the same as getting to see everybody, but it'll do.
I know. Well, Team D, thank you for your hard work, your diligence. We're going to carry on kind of in light of the small business and what you guys have learned in your municipality areas. I think you guys were focusing on Haines City, Davenport, and Lake Hamilton. So we're going to give you the floor. I'm not sure if you're sharing the screen, but if you want to go ahead, you can pull it up and you can share your screen for your presentation, and we'll lead on in.
Your camera.
David, was it you? I know you. I'm going to unmute you, hon. Was it you? Were you sharing your screen? Nope.
Amy.
Amy. Okay.
Hey, we sent in our video already. I thought y'all were just going to play the video.
We can. We most certainly can. Okay, Kirsten's right there. She's got you.
Yeah, I'll just listen to it.
Well, if you
It's
guys
only
like to
15
introduce
minutes.
yourself at the
So
end, and while Kirsten's picking it up, go ahead. You can just tell them
they're
where you're
gonna,
from.
we videoed it.
Oh, okay.
So,
So you're with them.
yeah.
Amy, David, John, if you guys want to introduce yourself, go ahead and introduce yourself while you're waiting for your slide presentation to come up.
I'll go ahead and start. I'm Dave Black, Lake Wales Police Department, City of Lake Wales, and Lieutenant of Investigation, and have really enjoyed my time with Leadership Polk and have missed seeing my class for the last 2 months. So.
Thank you, David. I'm John Hill, Deputy Superintendent of Polk County Schools. Ditto with what David said.
Hi, I'm Cindy Durham, Marketing Manager for Bay Care Health System, which includes Winter Haven Hospital, Winter Haven Women's Hospital, and Bartow Regional Medical Center, as well as urgent cares in the area, Winter Haven, Haines City, and soon to open in Lakeland. So I agree with them. I miss my classmates. I miss seeing everybody in person, but this has been a really great project and a great experience.
Amy Bailey, Community Development Director at the City of Lake Alfred, and I think they've said everything so we can get going.
Team Thrive is here to discuss the digital divide in Northeast Polk County. Our team includes Amy Bailey, Community Development Director with the City of Lake Alfred, Cindy Durham, Marketing Manager at Bay Care Health System, David Black, Investigations Commander with the Lake Wales Police Department, and John Hill, Deputy Superintendent at Polk County Public Schools.
Team Thrive studied the effect of COVID-19 pandemic on small businesses in Northeast Polk County, to include Davenport, Haines City, and Lake Hamilton. This study revealed many local businesses strive to adapt their practices to thrive during this period. Team Thrive learned how local chambers rally for the businesses in their communities, and we spoke with local leaders in the banking, restaurant, and computer industries.
Haines City is the largest and most robust city in Northeast Polk, with approximately 1,250 businesses. Lake Hamilton and Davenport each include approximately 100 small businesses. These businesses support development, tourism, and agriculture. Businesses that were not significantly impacted by the COVID virus were the auto, equipment repair, construction, supplier, and warehousing industries. Some actually experienced demand increases. Those significantly impacted included salons, rentals, retail shops, pet grooming, gyms, and tourist-related facilities.
The Northeast Polk Chamber has shifted how they are helping members by providing resources and support to make it easier to maneuver through this crazy time. The website was reformatted to make it easy for members to find important information. They posted a restaurant bingo on social media to gain support for local restaurant members, with a prize drawing for participants at the end of this quarantine. They also started a social media challenge with hashtag #PickUpNEPolk to encourage the community to support local businesses affected by the closures.
Local banks and other organizations have worked diligently to meet the demands of small business owners through federal grants and loans. Center State Bank's Travis Keys stated that the most significant issue facing small businesses was the transition to a digital way of work that necessitated infrastructure, connectivity, and communication systems to allow their employees to work remotely. Many small businesses found themselves ill-equipped and worked expeditiously to adapt to the digital challenge.
The computer industry has been able to bridge the gap in their local community by providing equipment, networking, and remote services to expand digital capabilities within homes. This need occurred due to the increasing number of students and employees studying and working at home. New Life's owner, Mr. Hunter, spoke of their new curbside service area to comply with CDC guidelines, the sanitizing of all computers, and how they provide more remote services locally and out of state.
So we also have seen an increase of remote services. So people would call in and we are able to just remotely access their computers as long as they have an internet connection, which prevents them from having to come out of the house.
Restaurants are responding differently to the required closure. Florentino's Italian Kitchen is providing catering, curbside pickup, and a takeout tent. In addition, they have expanded their marketing and promotions through Facebook and added their menu to the website. They recently added home delivery and new takeout options such as a pizza kit with dough and all the fixings. This social media post for the pizza kit had over 18,000 hits. Florentino's also created a Facebook page for first responders with a daily drawing for a free family meal. The restaurant was in the process of relocating its facility, which has now been delayed but not defeated. Currently, they are serving the same volume of customers as when the dining room was open.
Many small businesses of Northeast Polk County overcame the digital divide through innovation, creativity, and tenacity, along with outstanding assistance from the county, their municipalities, and the service industry. Many not only survived, but thrived in the digital divide. Team Thrive on 3. Team Thrive on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Team Thrive!
We're ready for questions.
Did y'all find that many of these businesses had significant difficulties with their broadband access, or either their customers being able to connect with them?
I know for the restaurant industry, I had interviewed several different restaurant owners, and we focused on the ones that were going above and beyond and trying new things. But some of the other restaurants didn't have those capabilities, or they didn't have the personnel who were capable of providing new marketing, putting out Facebook, doing those different things, because they were very focused on their restaurants. And so they chose to do other things, such as some of them were closed, some of them were only doing catering, which was something easy to pick up and do. So the restaurants were responding in different ways because of the different access.
Yeah, and the computer companies that were of such great service to the community. I was curious, how did they publicize their outreach to the community to help folks with their whatever they needed insofar as internet service or equipment? And secondly, it's a great irony, I think, to think about the digital divide and trying to outreach to folks that need internet service or Wi-Fi or what have you, when the very vehicles that you would publicize it with, like, they don't have. So it seems like it would be a challenge, I think, to also do the outreach.
Yep, with the computer, with New Life, I spoke with him. A lot of his business is, obviously he's a very small town, but a lot of his business is word of mouth. He treats people right, they tell other people, and that's how his worked well for him, right there. And that was the first part of your question. I apologize. The second part, they didn't discuss that. I guess probably that because of that they couldn't reach those people. Obviously, those people would probably have been lost, to be honest with you. I went through a thing yesterday with Xfinity online, trying to chat with somebody to get something fixed at my house. And I was just glad it wasn't my mom or dad trying to do it, because there's no way they could have navigated what I had to do. So those people are probably lost, unfortunately, in that situation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I think one of the things you've seen small businesses do is they've gone back to some traditional means of, communicating, banners and signs and promoting themselves to the best of their ability, the old-fashioned way.
Did y'all have any comments on the affordability of broadband internet from either the businesses or customers?
We didn't really have those discussions as far as affordability. A lot of the businesses that were in the study, not so much Haines City, but the smaller Davenport and Lake Hamilton, a lot of those industries are like steel manufacturing, the construction equipment supplies, different things like that. And so, so many of them weren't even really impacted by the shutdown. They were continuing business. And so a lot of those types of businesses weren't even concerned about access.
So for those that you were kind of describing as possibly were lost in the small business side of things, how would you propose the broadband services might help them not get lost in the future? Are you feeling like there's some benefit that those that have the access have that the others don't? And how do we narrow down that divide?
I think it's a
Go ahead, Amy. Is that Amy?
Well, I was going to say, one of the things that was interesting is that when you look at the businesses that we had in our study area, the ones that were affected were services that you had people coming in, like the restaurants or the salons or the pet grooming. And even if even if they had digital services, the fact that they can't have their customers there impacts their business. Whereas the other ones that didn't have the services to begin with didn't need it because they're providing equipment, materials, auto repair, all those types of things that they don't emphasize it now, and they didn't need it going forward.
And even both computer industries I talked to, they said nothing about having issues working with speeds or anything, working to do the remote services. So, and that would be a business, I think, if there was a concern, they'd say something about it. And I didn't hear anything along that line.
Yeah. Travis Keys of Center State Bank related a very interesting story to me in which a farmer in the community who was probably classified as a senior citizen, had access to technology, had the technology, but struggled with the electronic processes of loading information and documents to the bank to apply for the federal grants and loans. So he himself went above and beyond to assist, and he indicated that was kind of the process, or that's the way they were working, is going above and beyond to try to help those who aren't as technologically savvy. They may have had the actual access, but did not have the expertise per se. So training is one of the key components of those who haven't been exposed to the degree that other businesses would have in this field of technology, obviously.
Agreed. And I'm so sorry, but we are out of time. So thank you. Well done, team. You guys have done an outstanding job, Team D. You really have. So thank you for representing well. Thank you for your input on that. So bravo. So we're going to head on into our last and final team, Team E. He'll be representing small businesses, and theirs was primarily in the South Lakeland, Highland City, and Mulberry area. And so this will be wrapping up our small business segment for our project presentations. So if you folks would like to go ahead, Team E, and introduce yourselves and start on your presentation, please do.
Talitha, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, good.
And just so you know, I'm so sorry. I have texted Sherry Kelly. I'm not too sure if she's on the call. So just to make sure she was able to log into the Zoom. So
I'm going to share my screen, hopefully. Can you see that?
yes, we can.
Okay, is Team E here?
Yes, sir. Good morning, everybody.
Okay, I guess I'll kick it off. I was going to be the main presenter. Carrie, do you want to kick it off as project manager, introduce the team?
Hey, it's Sherry. I'm here too.
Okay. Carrie?
Sorry, we've got some presentations going on at work this morning, and I was trying to multitask. So.
Okay. I'll tell you what, I'll go ahead and kick it off. So Steve Elias here. This is Team Echo, or as noted, we're going to talk about the digital divide impact on small businesses in South Lakeland, Highlands City, and Mulberry. Our team consists of Carrie Griner, our illustrious project manager, Terrell Griffin, Sherry Kelly, and myself. And it's great to be in front of such an illustrious group this morning to talk about this issue that's front and center these days with the virus situation. We got a lot of material to cover. We're going to fly through it. Well, certainly we have some time for question and answers, but we thought we'd start with, what is the definition of digital divide? You know, that's an important question. Different people have different perspectives on this, but really it comes down to 4 consideration: who, the characteristics, the sophistication of the use, and the connection type. And in our case, we're focused, the slice work, by the way, that's over 200 combinations, how you can define the digital divide. But we're gonna focus on businesses, South Lakeland. Can you see my screen, by the way, when I do my cursor? Geographic location, retrieval for business, intensive usage, and then broadband. So you'll see this slide throughout our presentation, but this is basically the FCC GIS database. So we dug in and looked down to each property within our study area. But again, South Lakeland, Highland City, Mulberry, and the area in between. And the color coding represents how many providers, but we'll show you some maps on actual service upload and download. So next thing is to define what is broadband. The FCC currently defines it as 20 megabit per second download and 3 upload. But as we're seeing with this pandemic, just with today, that is not adequate. Going forward, it's going to be even more important to increase speed. But business needs today, a modern business that is a smaller business, using the cloud, really you need a minimum of about 100 megabits per second, megabytes per second download and 100 upload. Tech businesses today need even more than that. So you can see the disparity compared to 25 and 3. You know, in the news, you'll see, oh, everybody's got broadband, but they really don't. And then off to the right, let's see if I can minimize this. But you can see you know, there's just a little graphic looking at the pipeline characteristics or comparison between fiber and some of the historical means to move data. But fiber optic, I guess that's a conclusion on that. Fiber optic is an absolute must to define broadband these days. So you know, what does fiber optic mean? Well, it means smart communities, cloud computing, video calls, the Internet of Things. If you want to have 5G in your community, fiber optic is a must. This enables these things. Whoops, and I just lost my pointer here. All right, digital divide. Smart communities. It also means, you know, feeding our demand for data. You know, the days of my grandfather, I remember looking in the newspaper, looking at the stock quotes the next morning. Now we want it instantly on our phone. So immediate information. The tech acceleration phenomena, you know, where it took over 100 years to get landline phones to everybody. Now technology seems like it's adopted overnight. The curve is vertical. So that's all built on broadband availability. Small city, rural community survival going forward is going to depend on broadband. We're already seeing the consequences yet again of another worldwide phenomena that's accelerating the need for broadband, you know, with some of the recent closings. You know, over time, coal towns, gold miners, you know, now today, it's if you can't adopt and have a online platform and internet speed that is adequate, you know, you're seeing foreclosures. JCPenney and Kmart, Sears are just some recent examples. All right, digital divide in Polk County. What did we find in our study area? So we won't go into detail on these. We have a slide that summarizes all this, but we did look at all 3 areas. So the next 3 slides are South Lakeland, Highland City, and Mulberry. But you see the little table here. We just did a couple samples, but you look at the speed. Download, less than a gigabit, so 940, at least there was 940 download, but you notice the upload speeds, a maximum of only 35. Again, if you compare that to 100, that's not adequate. Now there were, well, you see a little bit of fiber in this area in Lakeland. So you see the second line down. Highland City, same sort of thing, cable available. Few providers relatively, you know, once it dropped off from cable, it was satellite, DSL, but 940 was the maximum download, upload is 35. Similar in Mulberry, although, you know, they didn't have as much coverage in Mulberry, just the primary roads, some of the rural areas didn't have it. So this slide here summarizes all those three maps. So basically few providers, there was cable, 940 download, 35 megabit per second upload with minimal fiber. The coverage, South Lakeland and Highland City had relatively better coverage. Mulberry, again, had less, but it was all done with copper cable. Summary, so there was no gigabit service available, low gigabit upload speed, which is, again, not adequate for to support small businesses or any business. The FCC minimum standard of 25 and 3 was met, but very, very little fiber optic. And again, conclusion, there was the need for 100 megabit per second upload speed was not met to support tech business. So feedback on the ground, the team all reached out to chambers, various businesses, DEO, some online sources. Really the summary here is that, you know, Polk organizations, not just businesses, were across the board on their recognition that they even had a problem, and where they were with availability. It was definitely across the board from one end of the spectrum to the other. We did note there was only 2,840 computer related.
Is it frozen for everybody or is it just me?
No, hi, it's Carrie. I can see and hear, but I can't hear Stephen at present.
Related jobs. By the way, data is, we have a problem viewing or no?
Nope, you're back.
Okay. So 2,840 computer related jobs. Here's one that was a good correlation. 1.2% of our jobs were computer and mathematical in the Lakeland, Winter Haven area, versus 3.1% nationally. So less than half of the national average. So that was one correlation. I know but that's the best we could do. We couldn't narrow it down just to our study area, but that was Polk County as a whole. Low tech businesses were surviving, but having difficulty. And again, high tech businesses need that speed. Even for this video call here this morning, we're probably experiencing some upload issues with trying to share a video call. All right, so conclusions. So pull this all together. So while
1 minute, my love.
Okay, last slide. So the FCC minimum broadband definition was met. Mulberry relatively had slower, and they actually had to serve some of their area.
He froze for me again. Anyone else? Yep. Okay.
Areas with satellite broadband was available. Low tech business, limited high tech businesses existed in our study areas. So we think there's a correlation there between lack of broadband and they just don't exist. So what are the opportunities here? We could definitely facilitate more high tech businesses or just businesses period within the study area. If we did have better broadband, better upload speeds, that would stimulate economic development.
I think Naomi said it best. This darn digital divide.
Development, so more local wealth creation. Okay, I'll stop there.
Sorry, Steve.
All right, so questions?
Maybe
Steve, just so you know, the last few minutes you were coming in and out. So that's what Talitha was saying.
Yeah.
I got you. Sorry. Well, boy, how ironic.
Yeah, it's actually what we learned through this process to some degree, and now we're living it.
Steve, even though the 940 download is available, did you find that most businesses or individuals were using it or could afford it?
I guess that question, Terry, could go to anyone on the team, right?
Certainly.
So during my feet on the ground activities, I really didn't have the discussion around affordability as much as just what process impacts the organizations or the small businesses had relative to where we were right at present. So kind of both things I learned drew a different conclusion for me personally. I kind of took the Highlands City area, went out and just talked to people, and I learned that a lot of them went back to basics when we hit the pandemic. They were literally phoning their customers and talking to them about what their needs were. They weren't relying as much on technology because they needed to get back to basics. But you know, again, I didn't run into businesses that were as heavy tech possibly as what we see in other geographic locations in Polk County.
So it was evident to me the challenges of having to deal with the fact that the FCC requirements are so minimal and the actual need is so much greater than what is available. So how do you think that small businesses would be able to combat that reality if there is no? It seemed like Steve had a bent, so I was kind of trying to feed into that with, you know, how do you begin to overcome that challenge if you're a small business and you're struggling with that fact?
Vote for elected officials who will support putting together a plan that's funded to accomplish broadband in our county. I mean, our county has a broadband plan with the ink dry from 2014 that says we're going to be, you know, have the fastest internet speed in Polk, you know, in Central Florida. And I have yet to see a plan that's funded, or, you know, so I think it starts with a plan. And then, you know, service providers, you know, should be brought to the table to be part of that conversation. And, you know, small business, big residents, everybody will share in the success of that if we can accomplish it.
Agreed. I think that's why we're grateful to have you as part of our Smart Communities lead team, Steve. I think you can help pioneer the way in that very well for us. So, well, thank you very, very much, Team E. Outstanding. You did a fantastic job. Well done. Thank you. We really appreciate all your diligent work. And we're going to be changing focus areas and heading into our agricultural part of the program now. And we're glad to have Team B kick us off in their area in Highland Park and Lake Wales area. So let them log on and share their screen and introduce themselves. So Brianna, I know you're unmuted.
Am I unmuted now?
You are, Alan. Yep. Okay.
You can hear me? Okay. Well, you're stealing one of my screens from our presentation where we introduce ourselves. So, but we'll go ahead and do that. I'm Alan Reed. I'm one of the principals and executive creative directors at MAID. We have Brianna Smith with us. I guess you can introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Brianna Smith, Finance Director for the City of Fort Meade.
And Stacy's, oh, there she is. Hey, Stacy.
Hey, I'm Stacy Walsh. I'm the Chief Development Officer for the YMCA.
So do you want us to just go right into the presentation, or do you want to, how do we do this?
Go ahead, just share your screen and head on into the presentation. That'd be great.
Okay. Everybody see that?
Yes, we can.
You see my cursor moving?
No.
See your screen.
All right, can everybody see the title there?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. All right, our title for our presentations is Assessing Agriculture and the Digital Divide. I just introduced our presenting team, so that kind of stole my thunder here, but this is our team. And we're also going to start with the definition of digital divide, keeping it a little bit simple. The digital divide refers to the gap between demographics and regions that have access to modern information and communications technology and those that don't or have restricted access. Technology can include the telephone, television, personal computers, mobile devices, and the internet. We are focusing on agriculture, and it is the art and science of cultivating the soil, growing crops, and raising livestock.
Alan, the slides, I'm sorry to interrupt. The slides aren't showing. It's only showing the home screen, the first slide. I just wanted you to know.
All right, hang on. Let me make sure I've got the right screen shared. Apologize, technical difficulties. That's why we needed extra time, right?
Alan, so you know what we're seeing? We're actually seeing the PDF of your Acrobat screen.
Okay, that's what I want you to see.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that there's not something else open that I don't want you to see. Let's see. Can you see that now? Did you see, what does it say now?
It's still the first slide.
Alan, do you want me to share my screen and then I can advance y'all's slides for you? I'm gonna go ahead and do that.
Well, I sent I don't know if you have my update or not, so let me try this one more time.
Okay.
Okay, do you see that now?
I think that's better. Yes,
Now what do
you're
you
good.
see?
There we go.
All right, good. Okay. All right. Okay, do you see what is the digital divide?
No. We see the presenting team.
All right, I think I know what the problem is. I think I need to not try to do full screen mode. That's probably the problem. Okay, it'll just have to be ugly. All right, so the defining agriculture, it's the art and science of cultivating the soil, growing crops, and raising livestock. It includes the preparation of plant and animal products for people to use and the distribution to markets. So Brianna is now going to talk about how the digital divide affects agriculture.
Okay, so in our research, we found the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations published a briefing paper in 2019 discussing the impact of technology in agriculture and rural areas. The world's population is expected to increase to over 9.6 billion by 2050, so there will be a significant increase in the demand for food. In order to meet those demands, the market is suggesting a, quote, digital agricultural revolution. But as you know, the rural areas will have a more difficult time making that transition. So if you'll go to the next slide, please. The basic transition will involve basic conditions such as infrastructure and connectivity, such as mobile service, internet access, and electricity. It will require affordability, education to understand the technology, and institutional support. Additionally, these are all hurdles that we have seen locally in Polk County over the last several years and have been a hot topic with Polk Vision. However, technology can make the pricing information more widely available to farmers. It will allow them to better utilize their resources such as water, fuel, and fertilizer, and also help them make more accurate predictions for things such as climate changes and pest attacks. So for all of those reasons, it could definitely benefit the agricultural industry as a whole all over the world. You can go ahead and advance one more, Alan.
Okay, so our focus area was Polk County, Lake Wales. The population was 14,225 in 2010. As of 2018, it was estimated to be 16,577. The location is at the geographical center of the Florida Peninsula, and it totals us 14 square miles. So then we had a number of company interviews, and Stacy is going to take us through those.
Okay, so we had company interviews with 4 different companies, and they were all based out of Lake Wales. And we had some pretty different ends of the spectrum for each of these companies. And I think a lot of it had to do with the size of the company and their footprint in the area and how long they've been in the area. And so we started with Hunt Brothers, and Bree did that interview and spoke with the team at Hunt Brothers. And Hunt Brothers had no impact, no modifications, and business as usual. So we also spoke with Florida's Natural, and they've been citrus processors since, I think that's supposed to be 1933.
They started 933.
Yes, they've been around for a long time.
Yeah, it's a very long time.
So they were the they are the state's largest citrus processors, and they had the IT infrastructure to transition their operations immediately. So they went right into being able to work remotely. They did not have difficulty working remotely, and their services did not change. They had a comprehensive plan in place in the event of a pandemic, so they were well prepared and ready to go. The next business that we spoke to was Bach Tower Gardens. It's a tourist attraction, as you know, established in 1929. They experienced some financial impact due to the gardens closing. However, they were able to pivot their services, mainly their carillon concerts, online through social media, and were still able to engage with their members and with their community through social media and their website. Also, some of their staff were able to work remotely, and some of their staff still were coming in. They used email to communicate, and they saw absolutely no impact. And then the last one was Yaman's Feed and Farm Supply, and he was my favorite interview, and we talked for a while, and I realized I knew a lot of his family, so it was really cool to be able to talk to him. But he said, we don't use technology, we never have, and we never will. He said that the only thing that's really impacted his business was the impact of seeing the regular customers who just didn't want to leave their house to come pick up their orders. So it was really interesting seeing the complete like night and day for some of these organizations and how they handled the digital divide during this. So
I just want to add too, I thought it was funny that he said they will never do social media, yet I went to his Facebook page to get some of the information I needed for their customers or for our presentation.
Yeah.
So that
yeah.
is.
Oh, Rob, Hammons doesn't have indoor plumbing, no lie. I'm not surprised. And I'm telling you that speaking with him made my day. He was just, sweetheart, I have to get off the phone right now. He was just the nicest man. But it was just very interesting hearing the vast differences with the larger companies and then the small, I guess mom and pop kind of stores. And you're right, my parents live in Lake Wales. It is the center of the universe. So that is what we have. And I don't know if you have any questions. I know it didn't seem like we really got that much information from these businesses, but we really did. And it was really insightful hearing how business was as usual for so many companies. And I was actually shocked to hear that speaking with them. And I know Brianna and I talked about that too. So I don't know if there's any questions.
Did y'all have any comments about employees, especially like migrant workers, and whether the lack of technology or broadband or even the virus had a big impact on migrant workers?
I did not with the companies that I spoke with. That was not one of the questions we didn't pinpoint specifically migrant families, but we did say, were any of your staff or your employees impacted, and how were you able to pivot the way that you communicate with your employees? And nobody really said that they had changed anything. Or that it was impacted, because I believe a lot of these families and a lot of the families we even work with at the Y we still were communicating with them the way that we communicated with them prior to all of this happening. So if they didn't have access to online services or didn't have access to even a cell phone, there were other ways that we communicated with them even after the pandemic. So.
Are you able, based on your experience, your research, to get a sense of how the digital divide might be holding back Polk County's ag businesses as related to the global ag companies? Is there a sense that you can feel about what you learned?
I can kind of help with that. I was the one that was working on the research for the food and agricultural industry, and pretty much my understanding was the urban areas that have the infrastructure in place are going to be able to have an easier transition. Places like Polk, we are a little bit ahead of some other places in our peer group, but what we're going to see is we will have to really ramp up our infrastructure to provide the availability in the rural areas. So the farmers that are located, say, in Lakeland or Winter Haven, they may have an easier time transitioning because they have broadband internet available in those areas, but maybe the rural areas of Lake Wales or Polk City or Fort Meade, broadband might be very difficult to get to provide the high-speed internet and the digital access that they would need, especially for computer access, for modeling, for their machinery that would run off of computers that would enable them to use water more efficiently and things like that. But I also saw that it's not just the United States or Florida or Europe. I mean, this is a worldwide phenomenon, and there are some great benefits that they can have with the technology, but infrastructure seems to be the most critical component that the world is trying to deal with, not just us.
Agreed. Time for one last question. Anyone have anything pressing? Rob? Well done, guys. Outstanding. Thank you. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for taking the time, meaningfully engaging. Thank you for pushing through and all the digital aspects of this that goes into it. So thank you. Well done.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So we're going to go ahead and we're going to actually finish up our, we have a few minutes, so we're going to just, as we transition in, if anyone needs a break, I know we're hitting an hour, so quite the power hour. I feel like that flew by. I don't know about for you guys, that's for sure. So we're going to finish out our segment in agriculture with our second team, Team C, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. Hi, Katrina. Okay, so if you're in Team C, feel free to unmute yourself and jump on in.
All right. Hi, I'm going to try to share my screen real quick. So, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, so before we dive in, I had a very confusing team. I had Andy and Andy. So I had to use last names a lot. But Andy Ray, do you want to start and introduce yourself?
Sure. Good afternoon, or good morning rather. I'm Andy Ray. I'm the police chief in Auburndale, and after a busy, super busy couple of days, I'm glad to be having a little time to talk to y'all and actually see my teammates.
Yeah.
And I'm Andy Oguntola. I currently work at Polk State College. I'm the center director for the J.D. Alexander Center.
Right. And I'm Katrina Hill. I work at CMP, and I am our lead marketing strategist here at the agency. So we were looking at the digital divide facing agriculture, as Talitha said, but specifically in kind of the Hillcrest Heights and the Frostproof area. So when we all first kind of connected at the start of this project, we realized each of us had a unique connection into somebody or some aspect of the agriculture industry in those areas. So we sort of divided and conquered, and we're going to each walk through and present kind of what we found from those conversations. So Andy, we will start with you.
Absolutely. So again, my name is Andy Oguntola, not Andy Ray, who you'll hear next. But one of the best things about this is, as far as technology and talking about our digital divide, one of the interesting factors that took place is we wanted to reach out to Ellis Hunt.
As we know that Ellis Hunt is over Hunt Brothers, and he's a third-generation citrus grower. But you really get an identity of find out what's taking place in the citrus industry and agriculture industry to see how we can modify some things. And so as the other team mentioned, one of the things right now, there was no real impact as far as COVID, just because nobody saw COVID coming. But at the same time, before the agriculture industry started or COVID started, agriculture was taking a nosedive. Many individuals didn't see what was taking place. In fact, the biggest issue that occurred was nobody was really drinking orange juice at high demands. And so one of the factors is technology-wise, they face the issue with advertising. Advertising has been a big issue for the agriculture industry. I'm trying to figure out how do they go back to the new generation, because earlier everybody loved vitamin C and everybody wanted it. But through this COVID-19 process, it increased the vitamin C portion because everybody started reaching out for it. Additionally, when you look at technology, speaking with Ellis, I said, hey, Ellis, and the reason why I picked him is because he is currently the chairman of the Florida Commission of Agriculture. I said, Ellis, what would you see or what would you change about technology? His response was, that's a tough question. And the reason why it's a tough question is because there's many different factors of technology as far as citrus and agriculture. One, he says, you have the juice plant, so much can go into the juice plant. You have the grove, so much technology can go into the groves. And at the same time, you have the packing plant. But when you think about Hunt Brothers being open since 1922, and now we're in 2020, he talks about how there's been a massive gap as far as technology and how everything is closing the gap each and every year. And he hopes that we can get there. But all the agriculture businesses right now are saying the same thing. And in the city of Lake Wells, one of the biggest things that takes place is that currently the commission doesn't know where agriculture is going to fall, because just 10 years ago or 15 years ago in the city, everybody knew agriculture was the big bump juice industry in the city. But now Lake Wells is kind of losing its identity. It's trying to figure out who they want to become and who they want to see when you have different ideas of downtown being developed and everything else. Also, hurricane factors. The biggest issue for agriculture is hurricanes. Nobody sees them coming. There's no technology that can stop a hurricane, obviously. And so every time a hurricane comes, the agriculture industry is always prepared to figure out how much juice they're going to lose. I never thought about it in that way. I never thought about components as far as the number of oranges that fall off the tree and how it affects the industry. And so that's a huge issue as well. Also, the question right now is, what happens when the pandemic is over? Where do they go? Right now, there's a big boom for vitamin C. Agriculture is moving in the right direction. But as I said before, there's issues with advertising. There's hit mid-season. As individuals, we're fickle. We like things right now for the moment. Whenever there's a fear, we currently jump on that. But when the pandemic is over, the question for the agriculture business is, will there be a need for vitamin C at a high level as there was during the pandemic to make sure individuals are accustomed to drinking orange juice and moving forward? And so I'll swing it over to Andy Ray.
Thanks, Andy. So I talked with Mike Roberts, and in the interest of full disclosure, he's my stepbrother. He is a really good guy. I've known him a long time. And he is the vice president of Griffin Fertilizer Company, part of the Ben Hill Griffin companies. So we talked about how the digital divide might be affecting him or their company. And he said that they are a global company and that they work with growers of agricultural foods and plants kind of locally and across the globe. Many of their customers are local Florida and Southeast U.S. customers, but they do have some that are global. We also talked about their business and how it's been impacted by COVID-19, and also whether there's any kind of evidence of a digital divide in the rural part of Southeast Polk, especially within the agricultural community. So Mike said they've not seen really any significant changes in the way they do business. And they have not really experienced any issues with access to high-speed internet. There are some additional tech things that they consider and that are an important part of their business. That they're actually they actually have the ability through their connections and technology for property owners and growers to be able to monitor their soil conditions and remotely and look at moisture levels, the levels of minerals, things like that, see what types of fertilizer or mixes of fertilizer they might be able to use to help their crops grow best in those conditions. Pretty interesting stuff that they can actually share online with Griffin. He also said they're currently obtaining some raw materials from different parts of the globe, which I thought was interesting. I hadn't really given that a whole lot of thought, but he said that they get some of their materials from Russia, like certain nitrates. From Canada, they get potash. From China, they get different emulsifiers, and other things from other places around the world. Still, there's phosphate obviously here locally, and they do get products locally in North Florida and up in the northern central part of the U.S. He said they do a lot of business in Florida and the Southeast, but they also ship some custom products to other countries around the world. One of the places that they were sending stuff to is in South Africa, and I thought that was pretty interesting. He talked about it's basically a custom product that they mix, and some of the people that they have working at the company, that's their specialty, the bio parts and scientific parts of and the chemistry parts of mixing the materials that are going to best take care and help grow their crops. Also during our conversation, we talked about their tech and how do they maintain contacts and connections. He said they maintain their own server and on site, but they've also recently upgraded their internet service to speed it up some. They're doing more volume of business over the internet and sharing that technology. They needed to speed things up, and they did have the ability to do that. He said they also have some plans to migrate to the cloud in the future, as that seems to be the direction that most companies are going, to increase their ability for storage and retrieval of that information. Mike said their sales staff and technical product experts communicate by email a lot of times. They do video conferencing. They also talk by telephone with each other and with their customers. And they do a decent amount in normal times of face-to-face contacts during sales calls. He said that's one thing that has changed during COVID-19 is the ability to actually see people and to make those contacts personally. So he said their contacts by phone and by email have definitely increased during this time. It's always good to talk to Mike. We probably had about a 20-minute conversation. He's a super intelligent guy, and he has a very good understanding of their products and how they work and the whole agriculture community. He's worked in that community for years, many years now. He's been with Griffin for, lose track of time, but probably 5 or 6 years, maybe a little longer. But he's done other agricultural work for years in soils and also in products. So it was really an enlightening conversation I had. Learned a lot about their industry as well and how they communicate with their suppliers and customers. And he did say, as we were getting ready to wrap it up, he said, like so many others, you either embrace the technology and the world, and its opportunities are going to pass you by if you don't. And I thought that was, that's pretty basic understanding we all have, but they definitely get it as well. So had a great time talking to him and learned a lot. Katrina?
All right. So I talked to the team over at Central Florida Ag News. I've known Nelson for a very long time. Worked with him way back in the day at the news chief office, actually, and talked to some of his editorial staff. And we took a little bit different look in that we looked at like small agricultural businesses. Nelson actually owns a family blueberry farm, and they talked to a lot of the smaller ag sort of family-owned small plot places. And kind of looked at the digital divide through that lens. And one example that they gave was interesting to me, that sometimes it's as simple as these farmers, the smaller businesses don't have all the same tools and financial backing that maybe some of the bigger ones do, and they want to do something as simple simple as take like a screenshot of their farm from Google Maps and use that to like map out maintenance needs or where equipment is or where crews will go. And you know, maybe because it's a more rural area, those satellite images aren't updated very often. And so it's not the most recent view that they would need to actually do that efficiently. Whereas, you know, your big cities, those things are updated all the time. So that was an interesting, just the fact that they're rural. Sometimes these just sort of common, widely available tools that I would never think to use, like an aerial view of my farm to kind of see how things are looking, could be a lot more useful if they were updated as frequently as they are in more populated areas. We also, our conversation centered more around workers, and I think it even did the businesses. We got into a long conversation about migrant workers. I think our general view on it that we settled on was that they face those workers face a divide in technology, not because they're ag workers, but more because they fall usually under the poverty line, and they face a lot of the same challenges that everybody that falls, you know, into that poverty group face. So then we got off on the sidetrack about what Polk County Public Schools did with the buses during COVID. So for communities that didn't have access to internet, for those of you that may not be familiar, they took buses that obviously weren't transporting students, outfitted them as these powerful Wi-Fi hotspots, and parked them in communities that needed access that didn't otherwise have that good high-speed access. None of us could find any like outcomes or results data from that yet. Again, school just ended last Thursday or Friday, so it's probably too soon for that. But we were all really interested in like how that worked and how that could maybe work to keep these migrant communities connected. Nelson also brought up something he'd heard from a buddy of his that actually it was either Iraq or Afghanistan, they were sending up drones above towns for 6 hours a day to provide Wi-Fi to those communities for a set like 6 hours every day. And that was like, well, maybe that's something we need to do over these migrant communities when we know that they're home, or maybe there's other options like that if the infrastructure that's in previous teams hasn't quite caught up yet. How do we let them get connected in other ways? But we also felt like just due to the migrant nature of workers, that coordination was really important. You know, he was talking to a principal of a local elementary school and how they have different populations of migrant kids every year, which makes it really hard because you want to follow that child through multiple years of school to really serve them the best. But every time they start at a new school, staff has to get to know them, figure out where they are, and almost start back at square one. And kind of across the board, when trying to serve these families, it seems like if there was more coordination across large geographical continuity of services to them, so that every time they move to a new area, they're not trying to figure out where to go get services or how to get connected or what to do. There's some systems in place that no matter where they go, they can get the services they need and access to the technology and the connectivity.
And I'm so sorry, I agree with you on all those things. We are going to have to wrap up because it's 10.
Sorry. Well, I was almost done, so we can stop.
Okay, so I'm really sorry. Unless the panel has just a quick thought that they'd like to give on their feedback. I was just trying to give as much time as we can because we love what you guys are talking about. Very, very good. But does anyone else in the panel has any thoughts, quick thoughts they'd like to?
I just had a thought as I was comparing the differences between one of the other ag businesses we talked about from another team and some of the ones that were highlighted here. How might the leaders of industry in Polk County begin to advocate for those who are impacted by the digital divide? So let's say Ben Hill Griffin's company isn't necessarily impacted so much, but how might they become leaders or influencers to help draw attention to why they're successful because they don't have the problems that some of these other industry people might have?
I think just a quick response. I think probably there's an opportunity. You know, Ben Hill Griffin's been around, that the companies have been around for years, and they do carry a pretty decent amount of influence, especially in Southeast Polk. And one of the things that cities and governments, even county governments, are doing now is they actually have the ability to build that infrastructure, and a lot of them are now starting to put fiber optics into the ground as they improve or extend their water lines and other utility services. So and there are a number of local governments that are doing that. So I think they could talk to the local governments, to the county, to the city of Frostproof about that potential, and I think they could try to persuade them to do that. Give them some encouragement to do that. And number one, there would be some money coming back to the government for that, to pay for that, but also it would increase the ability of people to have access to the internet that might not now.
Absolutely. Well, outstanding. Thank you very much, Team C. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for highlighting the joint venture that Polk Vision had the opportunity to serve with on the school board, that Smart Bus initiative. We appreciate that. So thank you very much for that. So we're going to finish out that agriculture sector, and I'm going to introduce you to Team F. They are going to be taking us into our final focus area for today, and that is the nonprofit area. So Team F, without further ado, I'll let you introduce yourselves, unmute yourself and go ahead.
Hey everybody, I'm just going to try and share my screen here, see if it'll let me do that, and Travis is going to start our presentation. Let me just get rid of that.
Absolutely.
And turn on Trav.
That is classic, let me just say.
There we go. Oh.
And now I just want everybody to keep in mind, although we're labeled as Team F, that does not at all translate into the type of grade that we're getting on this, just so you know. Please don't let that affect our evaluation. So we had a focus on the nonprofit sector and the geographic location of Winter Haven, Dundee, and Eagle Lake. And our group, we attempted kind of to immerse ourselves in it, each one of us taking a separate nonprofit within that geographical area. The four we chose from were the Boys and Girls Club, Heart for Winter Haven, Habitat for Humanity, and local Rotary Club. And each of us kind of immersed ourselves in those organizations, those areas, asked them questions about how they're doing during the digital, the COVID-19, and how the digital divide was affecting them each individually. And I think what that allowed us to do is kind of take a deeper dive into each one of those organizations, having each taken one. So that being said, well, I want to add one more thing. I think also through the process of doing this, that this was such a good exercise of getting to know our team members a little better. We were meeting on almost a weekly basis via Zoom, and a lot of the conversations we talk about our subject matter, and then we, hey, what's going on in your world, and what are you seeing in your each individual responsibilities now? So I think the exercise was just fabulous, and we had a great time. So without further ado, we're going to move on to the first one. That's Boys and Girls Club, and I believe Greg had that one. So off to you, Greg.
Okay, good morning. I hope Travis, okay, you can hear me. I can see you, Travis. Good morning. I had the fortunate ability to talk to the Boys and Girls Club, and it hit home for me only because one of the directors at the Boys and Girls Club was a close personal friend of mine. We actually went to high school together, played basketball together, ran track together. So he was a close and personal. And then his supervisor coached my son at basketball in Winter Haven. So it's a generational conversation that we had, which was a very good conversation about the Boys and Girls Club of Winter Haven. And if you go to the next slide, Amanda. And of course, it's a nonprofit organization dedicated to the care of children. We've seen the Boys and Girls Club on TV, numerous commercials, advertisement. Even one of the biggest sponsors or supporters of Denzel Washington actors and other professional sports athletes and actors and actresses. But the main vision and purpose behind the Boys and Girls Club is just to inspire and enable all young people, especially those disadvantaged circumstances. And the digital divide reaches home to the Boys and Girls Club, and I will relate that to you in a moment. So we're talking about the location of the facility, which is in Winter Haven. The Boys and Girls Club is located right off Havendale Boulevard. Under normal circumstances, their hours would be from 2 to 7, 7:30 to 5, but due to COVID-19, they virtually had to go virtual. And I'm going to show how they will adjust. The school serves Auburndale, of course, Denison, Elbert, Inwood, and Garner. So if you notice a theme about the schools that are served with by the Boys and Girls Club, it is mainly our underperforming schools. I believe most are within the C to F range. So we have socioeconomic and also digital divide going on at these schools, which makes the Boys and Girls Club a much needed location. And as I say, as you see at the bottom left, that is Avery Ingram. That was who I spoke with and had a good conversation with about the Boys and Girls Club and what goes on there. And just to sum it up, the Boys and Girls Club had to adjust during COVID-19. Many kids, even my wife, attended the Boys and Girls Club when she was growing up. It's a place for those kids who do not have, some are homeless, some do not have food to eat when they go home. Some parents will wait till 7:30, 8 o'clock to pick up their kids. Some can't afford the $5 to pay for the Boys and Girls Club. Most are on scholarships. Most don't even pay to attend. They just don't have the means to afford it. So it's one of those needed and much needed social platforms in the Winter Haven community that could not go without. Fortunately, the Boys and Girls Club was able to earn a grant from the Florida's 21st CCLC. This grant also helped with funding for computers, different games, providing them for different activities, drug and different money management events, opportunities to meet different community leaders within the Polk County, just to raise their awareness. It's not about Boys and Girls Clubs. It's not just about playing games and after school. Their purpose, their mission is to see young students develop and grow into mature professional adults. How did they go about and work around the social divide, the digital divide? Post on social media websites such as Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, newspapers, flyers, family meetings. They even had family meetings. Any billboards, newsletters, text messages, anything they can do to spread the news about not only the Boys and Girls Club closing, but the different activities that would be offered during that time. Technology facilities and difficulties. Really, there's 2 classrooms located on the first floor that is multi-purpose rooms. So one day it may be to host a event or parents' night. One day it may be for activities and homework. There's 10 houses. There houses 10 computers for participants that staff, family, and the participants can use. And on the second floor is mainly computers as well. The key issues faced by the Polk County Club: physical and social, like I talk about, academics, adult literacy, revenue, of course, and technology and communication. And I spoke earlier about the COVID-19 impact, but they were willing to do whatever it took to ensure our children and families had what they needed during this time. Then you go to the next slide.
Okay, just so you know, you guys have 2 minutes to wrap up if you don't mind.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Oops. Virtual club sessions, food, cooking, social games. This is what the Boys and Girls Club did to kind of work around the social and digital divide. And I will pass it on because I took up a lot of time. You go to the next one, Amanda Jo. Keep going. Yes.
Thanks, Craig. So I talked to Brad over at Hartford Winter Haven. A lot of you are familiar with Brad and his organization. Basically, to kind of sum up, they're kind of a conduit matching a lot of nonprofits in the area to bridge the gap between that may be lacking in the areas that are needed in the community. One of the things that we talked about is things they were not able to do. They hold a lot of meetings at South County Jail and Frostproof to kind of do some educational things, get them going together. So they couldn't meet in those circumstances. I know they offer counseling services a lot, and their president and Center State's Operations Center weren't able to do that. So they found out that the big things that they were facing were they didn't have some people didn't have the equipment to do things they needed. So that would be staff. Some of their stuff was outdated, or there were just the people they serve did not have the connections necessary to be able to utilize their services. And then again, the face-to-face counseling, they obviously couldn't do because of social distancing. So with that, we'll pass it on over to Mayanne and Habitat.
Thank you very much. Most of you are familiar with Habitat for Humanity, as they are really focusing on building homes for everyone that doesn't need a handout but a hand up. The eligibility requirements are mostly focusing on folks that live in the overcrowded homes, unsafe homes, folks that would like to be able to have their own home but can't afford conventional home mortgaging. So the digital divide is huge in that area. They depend a lot on website for getting out their housing applications, for volunteer recruitment. They still do a lot of snail mail and phone calls. They see a digital divide in their volunteers, in that the older volunteers still depend upon email and snail mail to get information, while the younger folks that like to work on their projects are more in tune to being texted back and forth to get their work assignments and do what they need to do. The Facebook comparison tells you that they have a lot of challenges in that folks aren't into social media much, so that's an area that they know that they have a huge difference in. But when it all boils down to what the next slide, Amanda Jo, that they really face is that the folks that they deal with have no internet connection in their current living situations, which makes it difficult for them. And they also have no ability to be able to afford that $100 for cable internet that would get them into a new home. So even though they are wiring their new homes that they build for technology, the folks can't afford to be able to pay that extra $50 to $100 a month to be able to have the internet connection. So they're using a smartphone with either free Wi-Fi or have no data plan on it, and need to go to libraries or community centers to get work done, or to print out a form and then actually walk in and hand it to somebody much to be able to get their work done. So Habitat has a lot of challenges.
And then we looked at the more established population at Rotary. Most of you know what Rotary does. What we found by talking to our friends at Rotary was that the impact really wasn't that people did not have the technology needed or the access to Wi-Fi. The problem that Rotary were finding was that because they have a more established and an older membership base, a lot of them were feeling less than confident in using Zoom and using the modern technologies that were needed. So it was a little different with Rotary to the other three groups, but just that they were finding some pushback from some of the members who did not want to meet virtually. So that was their challenge during COVID at Rotary. So findings from Team Fantastic, Mayanne?
Sure. The key three things we took away from this is that there are people that have the hardware and have access, but they lack the skills and the confidence to use it. There's the folks that maybe have the hardware, but they don't have unrestricted access to broadband or the internet services. And then those who have neither the hardware nor the broadband access, which really leaves them behind the eight ball in this county.
Outstanding. Well, phenomenal job, Team F. Any comments or feedback from our panelists?
Left them speechless.
I think we're all just watching the time, and our questions would require additional dialogue. So it's kind of like just wanting to Yeah.
Agreed.
Well, I'll make one comment out of the nonprofits here is they become the solution for the digital divide for a lot of their clients. So them being able to do that is very important.
Great point, Terry.
Well done, Team F. Thank you. Thank you for leading us that way. And we're going to head straight into Team G. So Team G, Derek and your team, if you'd like to go ahead and unmute yourselves, introduce yourselves, and continue on in the nonprofit focus area that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Talitha. Good morning, everybody. Let's see. Do we have everybody on, Talitha?
Yes, you do. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. All right. Well, then I'll go ahead and get straight away to it. Let me share my screen here.
Don't forget introductions, Derek. Sorry.
I got you. I've got a whole slide dedicated to introductions.
Great.
All right. So yes, we are Team G. The G Squad is what we're calling ourselves. So we had nonprofits in the digital divide, specifically looking at Lake, Alfred, and Auburndale. So again, my name is Derek Oxford, but a part of my team is Benicia Frazier with Polk County, Diana Simmons, and Matt Green. So I want to thank them for all the work that they did, especially with being separated. We weren't able to get together physically, but we were able to get together via Zoom at least once a week, and also via email as much as possible. So I want to thank everybody for doing that. So what we knew so far is that many nonprofits lack the organizational and technological capacity necessary to exploit the web. Nonprofits serve the needs of local communities and have a client base, typically on the lower socioeconomic status, and experience lower levels of web use. So our job was to identify some of those nonprofit organizations to determine if a local correlation existed based on what we know so far. The research that we obtained because of COVID-19 was more academic based. We were also able to reach out to a couple of nonprofits, but Benicia's role specifically was about, with her municipality connection, was to grab the census data from the areas so we could see the population density and so forth. We looked at 2010 census information as well as 2018 forecasting, but that's as far as we could get in terms of current data. Similarly, information was cited that gave us insight on internet coverage and subscription coverage for Lake Alfred and Auburndale, and I'll dive into that in a second. With the information, we further researched some random nonprofits to find out how they fit into these forecasts, and the information was quite interesting. In 2003, a survey on small minority-based nonprofits found that nonprofits lack the financial resources, technical expertise, and time to adequately create and maintain use of the web to not only advance their mission, but explain the information in a meaningful way. Another study done in 2010 showed the structural inequalities were even more dispersed based on new governmental requirements on data as well as privacy of their donors and shareholders. Leaders viewed technology as a necessary evil for administrative work and less as a strategic resource to support the mission and organization. So taken into perspective locally, what does that mean? Well, the randomly chosen nonprofits that we looked at are no different. So both cities are well known, they're well below the national average in terms of subscription service to the internet at 67%. This was back in 2008, mind you, versus 89% nationally. So that's a huge disparity. One could really surmise that smaller nonprofits in both areas would be similar to the study I just referenced. Oop. So the response to COVID-19 obviously highlighted some of this disparity and the inability to leverage the potential use of the web. So as a group, we came up with some questions to ask our nonprofits to help find answers, such as what's the status of your business? Have you modified operations during COVID? What challenges are you facing with the future of your organization? Who handles the technology side? And what sources does your income derive? So in Diana's findings, for example, both of her nonprofits had volunteer staff handling website and social media, as well as newfound Zoom meetings, of course. A single staff member at both organizations assisted with technology issues, and that was it. Neither missed a step though. Both were directly impacted from physical activity. So two of the ones that she looked at was the First Baptist Church of Auburndale and then Fundamentals for Kids Incorporated. So we had some early resolutions. We noticed that disparity in all of our conversations of how the different nonprofits use the web, as well as the technical expertise of those involved with that tech side. So two approaches seem to have promising future resulting for these nonprofits as we go further down the path of using technology in everyday life, especially if they're not using it ongoing. So the first one was participatory design integration, which uses technology in a normal work setting. Which was not something that these organizations that we looked at and spoke to were doing on an ongoing basis. I mean, everybody, of course, has a cell phone. You say that everybody has a cell phone. But in terms of using your computer to actually get in front of people, not so much. So interlacing your job duties with using technology on an ongoing basis seems to be a good solution, as well as service learning utilization, which basically takes the volunteers to do the work of setting up and maintaining the websites and social media for you without having them on payroll. So just more of a working volunteer. So how do you execute those two things? In terms of participatory design, an organization must find the funds necessary to acquire the technology, service it, and pay for ongoing costs in maintaining it. An easy way to do that, talking with some of the nonprofits, was having somebody on staff who knows how to write for grants. So that way they can obtain the funds and be able to train those staff members to use it effectively. For service learning, you have to increase your board participation. You have to have more volunteers on your board, as well as even subcommittees of those boards and comprised of volunteers and leaders in the community to help share the load of the work, as well as get the word out. So in terms of long-term benefits, of course, we feel that both options outweigh any kind of issues going forward in the long term. Both can create additional cash flow streams for the organizations. Both create more visibility in the community. Like I said, if you've got leaders on your board, they're going to be talking and creating that buzz so that your board is recognized, that your organization is recognized. And then, of course, it builds staff skill sets and creates a better culture for the organization. Some of the information that I looked at as well, just talking to some of the volunteers from Farm Worker Ministry Incorporated, they were literally dead in the water during this COVID situation. Most of their revenue derived from a few single events which required physical activity, and they weren't having those. Just amazing information that we found, and very sad, but hopefully once we can start getting things running again, we'll be able to see some of the income flowing in for these organizations. So with that, just a quick reference guide of the information that we found. Again, like I said, because of COVID, we were very academic in the information that we found, but we're able to get a hold of some of our organizations via phone or email. And with that, that is it, and I will stop sharing my presentation here.
Okay, panelists, I think we do have enough time for some questions, and so we'd love to hear from you.
Mark Miller's microphone isn't working, but he would like to ask, how much additional technology infrastructure do the nonprofits need to get them up to speed?
Benicia, do you want me to answer that one? Do you want to answer it?
You go ahead, and then I'll add some supplementary information.
All right, perfect. So looking at the technology, I mean, every staff member should have access to a computer or a laptop, as well as an organization's cell phone, so that way they can be on top of social media as a way to access their donors in a much quicker fashion.
And I'll just jump in really quickly. Just due to the nature of COVID, I've had the opportunity to speak with a number of nonprofit organizations directly, due to their need for CARES funding. And so what I've been finding is that a number of organizations, rely on volunteer participation, and a number of their high-ranking staffers are actually part-time. And so, you know, in terms of the digital divide and the real-time effect of these organizations' responses as it relates to COVID, you really get to see some of the disadvantages that they do have. I have some specific information. I'm not going to name these organizations, you know, directly, but there are a number of chambers that function in a way to where their staffers are mostly volunteers. The directors are part-time, and so they haven't been able to function in this environment. They haven't been able to pivot. And so that's just one example of how the digital divide can directly impact how a nonprofit organization can function.
Anyone else?
It appears to me that the social services side or the sector of nonprofit has the best ability to tangibly display the digital divide in ways that other organizational structures probably cannot. So by creating a picture of this divide and letting the public understand it would be a great way for us to be able to illustrate the challenges, because a lot of people don't really believe or understand that there is a digital divide. So how would you love to position this information to allow people to see this is a reality and this is holding people back and not allowing them to have access to the information that is available?
Well, one thing that I would say is being someone who's worked in the chamber world, that was the first way that I reached out both to Lake Alfred and then Arbondale. Because of COVID, both of them were working from home. So even getting in touch with them took time. But they communicate directly with more than just a handful of businesses. Both of them have a pretty diverse membership. So it's education and information. It's consistent communication back and forth to let them know. And that way the businesses can step up, those that are able and willing to help, again, make that divide so much more minimal. So it would be education and communication in those areas.
Great.
Thank you, Chris Ann, and I'll jump in and follow what Diana was saying. The social services nonprofits, as you said, have the most potential, but also seem to have the biggest issues. I spoke with the World Wake Organization, for example, out of Lake Alfred. They're a nonprofit, and I put that in quotes. Nonprofit, a worldwide organization out of Lake Alfred. No issues with any kind of online based services. The only thing they had to deal with was, oh darn, their event in Thailand got canceled, but they've got another one in July. So it's definitely a disparity even in that realm.
Well done, Team G. You did an outstanding job representing. Thank you for taking questions. Thank you for making time for this. So we really appreciate your insight into this, and I look forward to seeing what we can do.
Thank you.
On it. So well done. Okay, well, last but not least, we're going to finish out the nonprofit sector with Team H. And so if you folks would like to go ahead and unmute your microphones and introduce yourselves, you can take it away and finish us out today.
Nick, I think you're starting. Yeah.
What's that?
I think you get to start the presentation, right?
I did. Do you mind sharing it? Because the file did not come through for me. I saw you trying to send it the other day and it was exceeding capacity. Do you have that ability?
Kirsten, do you have our presentation?
Yes.
Give me one moment and I'll pop it on this.
Well, first off, I'll just apologize for not being dressed as exquisitely as Mr. Oxford. But try to make it up for being here in more lavish digs. So, all right. So here we are, discovering the digital divide for nonprofits in Bartow and Fort Meade. Kristen, if you want to hit the next slide. There we go. We'll be looking at the comparison of poverty levels, median household income, broadband internet access, and then Lindsay will be talking about the Peace River Center, and Ben will be talking about Friends of the Library, Fort Meade. Next.
Actually, if you, sorry, Kirsten, if you'll pause for just 1 second. Nick, it looks like she's got the presentation that does not have our team slide in there with our names and our beautiful pictures. So I was thinking that we would use that as our introduction. So there it is.
Oh, there it is. All right. Yeah, sorry, I thought that was maybe after the overview slide. So with us today, we have Ben Stevenson, Executive Director for the Lake Clinton Housing Authority. Myself, Nick Plott, Regional Manager for External Affairs for Tampa Electric and Peoples Gas. And the lovely Lindsay Zimmerman, VP of Investor Relations, and something cut off by my screen here, but all around amazing person at Central Florida Development Council. So let me move my thing to the other side of the screen. All right, next slide. All right, just getting a baseline of what we're starting with, and I'm sure being the last group here today, y'all have seen these numbers, and many of y'all know these numbers much better than we do. But just level setting, looking at poverty rates, we'll start big to small. U.S. poverty rate per capita 11.8%, Florida 13.6%, and then Polk escalating 15.7%. And Bartow and Fort Meade, small sets within Polk County, 17.2, 17.1. So what we're learning there is Bartow and Fort Meade are impoverished areas within an impoverished county within Florida, and we're all above the median level for the United States. Next slide, please. And more of the same. What would obviously flow with that is median household income following suit, with median income $60,293 for the United States, and then in Bartow, Fort Meade, $46,850 and $43,233 respectively. Next slide, please. And here we are talking about the digital divide. And this really stuck out to me. It really blew me away, to be quite honest. When you see that, percent of homes with broadband access in America is 80%. 80, it's even actually higher by 1 percentage point for the state of Florida. But in Polk County, we're starting to shave off, down to 67%. In Bartow and Fort Meade, respectively, 60 and 58%. I mean, in Fort Meade, you're almost talking about half the population without broadband access. We hear about the term digital divide. I listened to a great podcast the other day with Kim and the ladies at the Winter Haven Chamber talking about this. But until you start to see these numbers in front of you, it really starts to paint the picture. We are really dealing with something that is going to separate communities. Communities with broadband access just have a step up on the others. And I won't go too deep into it. I'll let Lindsay and Ben jump in with their presentations. But there's a level set for where we're starting and the obstacles to overcome. So I'll let Lindsay jump in here with her research on the Peace River Center.
So in looking for an organization in the nonprofit realm that had a presence in Bartow, we selected Peace River Center. Though headquartered in Bartow, they're actually an organization that serves the Tri-County area, including Highlands and Hardee counties. They offer community mental health services in those county areas through inpatient and outpatient services, residential treatment, day center programs, and domestic violence services and shelters. And similar to Nick's stats regarding the poverty rate, 90% of the 23,000 clients that they served in 2019 were at 200% of the federal poverty guideline or below, and 22% of those clients were uninsured. So the level of service that they are providing is really to an underserved and underrepresented group within our communities. And those are, so when looking at their service, the digital divide may play into their clients that they need to reach heavily. So we took some time to understand how they're addressing that. And they've really taken on a strong presence in the digital service delivery. And even so, prior to COVID, they were already doing telehealth, but it was primarily through telephone or video application. And it really was targeted at their psychiatric services. But post-COVID and kind of where they are now, they're still continuing that telephone and video, but they've also created spaces within their offices to allow clients to still come in because they likely do not have the access to a video or laptop to be able to log in for that type of service. So they are coming into the clinics, but practicing social distancing, but have created those offices to allow for them to come in and have a telehealth appointment with a physician on the other end of the computer or other end of the phone. They've also added therapeutic services through telehealth. So what the difference in that really relates to, is it counseling or is it medication management? So psychiatric services, they're having an opportunity to speak with a physician. They're talking about managing their symptoms, managing their illness, and they are needing that medication management. And therapeutic is really the counseling side of their services. And they're even doing it down to adolescents and children and adults. So what they found in adding the therapeutic services is they're able to service more clients. They don't have that travel between homes. They have a lower rate of canceled appointments. So the telehealth, the need to increase access to care through telehealth has really paid off for them. Now, there are downsides of that, right? Counseling through a computer or through a phone is a different type of environment, but they're working through that. Their day programs, specifically their clubhouse, is a program where individuals who have a very strong mental illness that is somewhat debilitating in their ability to get jobs and different things like that. Their clubhouse creates an environment for those clients to come and be in community with people. And with COVID, the ability to be in community was a little bit different. So they now utilize Zoom for those programs. And of course, they're facing some digital divide. And I said, has that hindered any of the clients? And she says, the person I was speaking with indicated that no, that they've worked through those barriers and they've been able to create that access point for those clients. And so that's sort of their differentiation between pre-COVID and post-COVID digital service. Kirsten, next slide, please. They've also been using a digital client communication. So they have always had that's not the right word, but they have an EMR system, and it also includes a client portal. So those clients can get into their records, similar to Watson Clinic or an LRH system. They text appointment reminders, which is a convenient new tool for them. Probably also helps in the no-show rate being lower, which is always helpful. And then what was our last one? Oh, automated voice messaging. So similar to probably what if you have a child in the Polk County School Board and they call you and tell you when they're didn't show up for school, or if there's an announcement going on, it's the same type of system. There is for those that have the cell phone, right? Which again, deals with that digital divide, but they've found a great ability to communicate with in a variety of different means to address the digital divide. They have, that's just the digital divide within their client population. They also institute it through with their donors and their volunteers, but we focus on the client delivery.
Good morning, everyone.
Hey, Ben. I just want to give you a heads up, just a couple more minutes to wrap up here, please.
That's 3 more minutes than I need.
Okay.
I want to thank Nick and Lindsay, the 2 best teammates in the history. It's a pleasure to work with them. The Friends of the Library is a community-based organization serving the citizens of Fort Meade and Polk County. It was established about 2 years ago to assist the library with providing community outreach projects and events that include supporting the Code Club. And that's basically a high school computer club. And Friends of the Library purchased some computers for them. And they also put on a little free library and basically ensure they're stocked with books so that over the summer, if children school age want to come and borrow some books to have something to read over the summer. Float for the Christmas parade that goes through down. The float represents the library, and they also participate in other chamber events and activities, and raisers and meet and greet the Friends of the Library. They're talking their family and their friends. I want to share some trivia that I learned about Fort Meade that wasn't aware of. Population 6,203. It was settled in 1849, so it's a long in Polk. It was named after George Meade in the Second Seminole War. And the area is popular for kayaking and canoeing, but also known for citrus and agriculture. Next slide, please. The county does not have a web page or use Facebook and other social media platforms. So the digital divide is kind of non-existent there. It's a low maintenance operation, no photos, no articles, mission statement, and the information is primarily put in one language, which is English. Next slide, please. But they did use flyers to distribute information into the community, and it posted at strategic locations throughout the city. And this took on that meets the needs of its target clientele, and they find ways to get the information out. And this particular model, which is again low maintenance and simple, and it works for them and allows them to meet some of the needs of their community. Next slide. This is an example of one of their flyers that they produce. And again, they just pass them out, post them in strategic locations. And they sent me 3 of their flyers. Because I didn't see it on the slide. Do you have another slide? Is that it? Yep, that's it. They showed me the slide that they use. I'm sorry, the flyer they use for the Christmas parade and one of the other events. And so, again, a low maintenance operation.
Well, thank you for wrapping us up so nicely. Thank you for your diligent work, and I couldn't agree with you more. The digital divide has never been more evident than we've seen right now, and especially in our nonprofits. So thank you for doing such a thorough job there. Do the panelists have any observations or comments with this last group?
You know, I have a general comment that really spans across many of the presentations we've heard today. And what's interesting is while we may have heard that some of the organizations, like the last one, really are not impacted by the digital divide. We heard some of our businesses really felt that it wasn't a tremendous impact on them. But I think if we drill down a little bit with them, some that have the services that they need, they may not be reaching their customers. If we're talking about even the counseling care through Peace River, the folks that they're serving need to be able to have that access to be able to receive that care and connect through. And I think there's layers, because there's the business themselves doing the business, and then there's the service or the consumer products that they're providing. And so I think we have to kind of think about those different levels.
Each of us, each of our municipalities, each of our industries and our businesses To steal a phrase from an earlier presentation, Steve mentioned that all of us are in different places in their digital transformational journey. So I think some of you have been on with us for a couple of hours, and each team brought a different lens, a different perspective, and a different emphasis. Some were really data heavy, others were more personality driven, and I think the entire 2 hours for me was very illuminating, and I appreciate the work of every single member of this class, particularly you know, each class 1's the best, of course, but each class has had unique and wonderful experiences together. There definitely will be nothing like this class. And I just want to make a promise to those of you still on the line. We usually celebrate your graduation in a large setting. I don't know what's your celebration. I don't know how your class is going to walk together, but Talitha and I promise you, and our board of directors promise you, that we will celebrate you in a big way as soon as we're able to navigate those waters. So I just wanted to thank everybody and our panelists, those of you who were able to stay on the line, for you unique perspectives, and for Rob Quam's wit. He didn't share much today, but he shared some wit with us early on, and I want to thank all of you. Terry, from a digital divide perspective, for someone who's worked in this space, led armies of folks and led a city through some tumultuous decisions. Do you have any comments before we ring off?
No, I really enjoyed the information. One thing that really hit me there is that if every nonprofit could also provide the service of internet access to their clients, that would be a big hit on the digital divide, I think. But they would need funding to do that. So maybe that's something that, you know, the county and the municipalities and even private business could get behind to help those nonprofits have the access that they need.
Agreed.
Hey, Kim. Hey, just so you know, I just want to give a great round of applause and, you know, kudos to Talitha. She did a tremendous job coming in kind of the second quarter of the game and just being a phenomenal leader for this entire experience. And then we get to the fourth quarter of the game and just all hell broke loose. So just kind of figuring it out on the fly. I'm sure you're involved with that as well, but the entire team, but Talitha especially, just did a tremendous job throughout all of this. So just wanted you to be aware of that and the entire team to know what a great job she did. So
yeah. That's very kind of you.
I couldn't agree more. She's had to navigate some really unique circumstances this year, and she stepped right in, and she's very solution oriented, and she doesn't like to say no. You know, she begins with yes, and then tries to work a plan that's realistic and actionable, and she's done a marvelous job, and I'm glad the class realizes that. Thank you, Nick.
Oh, no. Tremendous job to all of y'all for just trying to improvise on the fly here and just getting the best out of a weird situation.
Yes. Well, I hope you feel like this has been time well spent. I am so incredibly proud of the hard work that these leaders have put into things, you know, in just some very uncertain circumstances. And so they have just done outstanding. Thank you guys for listening well. Thank you for the great feedback. It's not just taking it to heart, but it's seeing where we can lead from here. And so, you know, great leaders, they don't just come from being great role models. They come from great goals that they set ahead of themselves and work towards. And we've seen that in the classes that have led before us. And we've seen that in the trailblazers that we have in this organization. And so thank you for being part of that. Thank you for being one of those great leaders. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this incoming class, and I'm very excited for what they're going to do in our county and the participation. So I hope you've gleaned something from this. I know we have, and we certainly don't plan on just leaving it here. We plan on using this over the summer and really trying to be advocates in the areas that we've been placed to do something diligent and hopefully meaningful with what we've learned. So we're going to be taking this. You'll see it across our social media platforms in various capacities, not a full 2 hour blog, but in some way, shape, or form, we're going to highlight the great work that's been done here. So thank you for being part of that. And again, if there's any questions, just for the sake of time, I'm not going to keep you any longer. But if there's any questions or feedback, I would love to hear that. It's always great for us moving forward. So we really appreciate that. So
I'd like to thank Kirsten for making certain our Zoom platform was stable today. Thank you so much.
Anytime.
Yes. Well, au revoir. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. Thank you guys so much. Cheers.